start recording. Come on. All right, come on. There we go. All right. And so, of course, I'm in Blender. And I'm just going to say general because that's going to allow me to start with a new cube, right? Let me also just make sure to kind of make Blender a little bit smaller just because sometimes it cuts off stuff on this projector. So I want to make sure this is a little bit better for my students that are actually in class. Just going to make sure this is squashed down enough so we can basically see everything. All right, and it looks like that's about it. Yeah, okay. So there we go. So got that made a little smaller. Come on, Blender. Catch up. So once again, we're going to do some test bedding here. We'll see how this works with Teams streaming, with Blender running, and with OBS Studio capturing. This might hit some performance issues, and so I might have to go back to recording videos separately and then just do lectures in class as well, which is not the end of the world, but like these are the kinds of things that, until we're actually doing this week, can't quite, get settled. Oh, come on. I really would like to be able to capture the lecture, but I'm not sure if it's going to work that way, guys. Darn it. Shoot. That's taking way too long. All right. That's going to be tricky. I call shenanigans, computer. Okay, there we go. All right, come on. I want modeling. Go to modeling. There we go. Okay, good. Just taking a little bit of time to wake up. There we go. All right. So what I really wanted to show you guys today was, remember, you can always turn your camera and light visibility. Oh, man, okay, this might go slow. I might have to turn that capturing off. We'll see, though. Remember, you can go to Outliner here, and you can turn the visibility off for your cameras and your lights if you don't want to see them in viewport. Remember, we want to be in modeling layout. And what I want to do is I want to build a wall unit for you guys today, right? Now, this is going to be pretty straightforward, but it is going to be new stuff. Because this is going to kind of be like a kind of rectangular unit with some extrusions off of it. But it's also going to be curves. I'm going to show you some more curve stuff, how to do pipes and hoses. So that's what I really wanted to show you guys today, was kind of that. Now, the nice thing, and this is something that even if you don't have remember, I am capturing, so you might want to make sure you guys' microphones are off. All right, so 2.9 is one of those things that, let's see, whose microphones? Okay, let's see. Yeah, guys, make sure your microphones are off, because I am recording this stuff, and we don't want to necessarily accidentally record you guys. So I would double check that your microphones are off. All right, so now this is one of those things where you're going to want, if you really want to be able to do what I'm about to show you guys with the Extrude Manifold, you're going to want to make sure to have 2.9, right? Now, you can build kind of a structure just with the normal box modeling, cube, put some edge loops on it, things like that. But I wanted to show you guys a little about how Extrude Manifold works. So in this case, I'm going to go to 3 for face mode. And I do want to work with symmetry, so I'm going to do Alt-C, right? So I can put a loop cut down the center. Remember, Alt-C is your quick key for loop cut right there. So put it right down that center there. And then, of course, I'm going to go to Q for my selection tool, right? Remember, Q is your selection tool, and I can 3 in face mode, select that face. Remember, up arrow on your keyboard is grow. Or in Blender, it's select more and less, right? Up, down arrow. And then I can hit delete. And of course, I can go down to faces. And this is stuff we've seen before, right? I'm going to go to 4 for object mode. And I'm going to go make sure I'm on my blue wrench, right? And I'm going to go to add modifier. And I'm going to apply mirror, right? Now, I want clipping on, because we like the clipping. And also, remember, we like that triangle. Like I said, if you're not in 2.9, that triangle is kind of more on the back end here instead of the front end. But that triangle is important to kind of let you see the full edit mode with your modifier on. And of course, we like clipping because that makes it so we can't pull the center off there. And this will make it easy for me to kind of bring this up because we want this to kind of be a wall unit, right? For like energy or power or maybe a computer, like a supercomputer mainframe or something like that. Something kind of futuristic and neat. Now, at this point, I do feel like I need some more edges here. So I'm going to hit Alt-C. I'm going to left-click drag up, right? Because that'll allow me to put my edge where I want to. And I'll hit Q to go back to Selection Tool. I'm going to go to 3-face mode. Now, we have our Extrude Tool, right? It's right here. Now, here's the thing. Control-E, of course, is the quick key for that. But remember, particularly when you've got the modeling workspace up, right? You'll notice that you have kind of your basic modeling tools right here. Of course, you can right-click, and you'll see that those options are, a lot of those options are there as well. But one of the things you'll see is there is the Extrude Tool right here, right? It's kind of right below what looks like kind of a rulers and an arc. It's the measure tool. And you see there's Extrude Region. Now, you'll notice it's got a little triangle in it, right? Whenever you see little triangles on tools, that means there's other alternatives for that. So if I hold down left mouse button on that Extrude Region, come on. So if I hold down left mouse button on it, you'll see how it brings these options up. So you see there's extrude along normals, extrude region, which we've used several times. You can extrude individual. But there's also this new feature which you will only find in Blender 2.9 and above. So if you're in 2.83, you're going to look for this and not find it. That's why I was kind of telling you guys, hey, get to 2.9. There's some cool new features we're going to try to take advantage of on this project and later projects. But there is a new feature they added in 2.9 called Extrude Manifold. Now, do you have to use this? No. If you just want to do normal extrude region to create this shape, you can. But I wanted to make sure you guys see how to use this and that this can kind of do some neat stuff. If any of you guys have ever seen SketchUp, this is actually basically like that. So if I switch my Extrude tool to Extrude Manifold, what's really interesting is I can left-click drag, I can select the face, and I can drag this out, right? And you'll notice that it actually dissolves that edge right there, right? So when we extrude this out, it dissolves that edge. You'll also notice that if maybe I wanted this to kind of come down lower, I could extrude this, and it dissolves those inner structures usually there as well. So you can actually start to do stuff with this thing that's really kind of interesting, where I can kind of extrude that out, and then I can extrude this face up. And what you'll note is these are actually all together, right? If I hit like Alt-X to look inside, you see how the geometry's gone? So believe it or not, an Alt-X is your X-ray mode. So if you hit Alt-X on your keyboard, it's X-ray. It is a button right here, though, right? So do you have to use Extrude Manifold for this? No, but it's kind of neat because I can even extrude this out right here, and it welds those together. That's one of the interesting things. If I switch to, like, say, my regular move tool, and I move this out, you see how those are properly connected? Now, this does create a lot of n-gons, so if you really don't want a lot of n-gons on this model, that kind of might be something you don't want to take advantage of, right? But this is a really fascinating and interesting tool in the way it works, right? Like, I could even select these two faces and extrude those down. And you see how, once again, it kind of dissolves that stuff. If I want to, I could, you know, put some extra edge loops here and there to do more. But you'll notice, like I said, Alt-X, there's nothing left in between those, right? So it's kind of the way it works is really interesting in the fact that it dissolves the forms. Now, like I said, do you have to use this tool? No, and it will create n-gons. Having said that, though, since this is something we're probably going to just bevel, might not be too much of a problem with that, right? So keep that in mind. N-gons you could start to get away with on flat planar surfaces, right? Like this right here is an n-gon, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vertices. That's an 8-sided polygon. It's an n-gon, right? Because it's got more than 4, right? 5 or more. An n-gon on, like, say, a spaceship or a car or a character or creature where there's lots of curvature is bad. It's going to create weird shapes. It's going to, particularly on a character creature, which deforms and changes shapes and animates, it's going to bend in weird ways and do unpredictable things. So generally, remember, we like quads. But if you're working on like a building, if you're working on a very boxy structure, if it's a planar polygon that doesn't animate, that's not in a curved area, your N-gon's not going to cause as many problems. So I always tell my students we have a strong quad preference. It doesn't mean we can't sometimes use something else, right? So this extrude manifold's cool. Do you have to use it? No. But I wanted to show you that there actually is this new feature in 2.9 that basically, if you've ever looked up SketchUp, which people used to like build houses and things like that, like really quickly, there's actually that modeling functionality in there, right? So there is the extrude manifold. It does do some kind of neat stuff, right? I'm going to leave that for here because, hey, that's cool. And it might be one of those things where, you know, I can go back and take some edges out here and there if I want to. You know, I'll go to 2 for edge mode, and I can select that edge. Remember, delete, right? And in this case, remember, when you want to delete an edge and not leave the vertices behind, right? Hit delete, dissolve edges, right? So dissolve actually takes out that vertex that would be left behind. So you can come in here if you want to, and there's some of these guys you can delete, right? Hit delete, dissolve edges. And you'll notice that this is all built, and see, it's all one piece. So that's what the extrude manifold does, is it's allowing you to extrude, but when you extrude stuff, it will dissolve kind of the overlaps, right? And that's something SketchUp does. So it's kind of a neat feature and function that Blender added in 2.9. Now, could you get this just with a strategic use of loop cuts and extrusions? Yeah, right? It's pretty easy to get that. So like I said, if you'd rather just use normal loop cuts and extrusions and keep it all quads, guys, that is fine. I just wanted to make sure you guys know that there is, when you hold down left mouse button on your extrude tool here, you have several other options. Some of them we've already seen, and we know we can get them through like right click. But there is extrude manifold, which is neat. Now in this case, I want to put some bevels on this. So I'm going to go to 2 for edge mode. And let's turn our extrude off though. So I'm just going to grab some edges here, kind of on our corners, right? Because that's usually where you want your bevels to be at, is kind of where you have corners. Remember, if you want to, you can hit Q, right, to go to circle. Right? Remember, Q, if you keep hitting it, toggles through. You can go to tweak. There is circle select, which is your drag select. So if you hold down shift, you can just left click drag your cursor and do some quick kind of drag selects. Oh, in that case, to select that one. So if you want, you could always just come in here with your drag select to grab these guys. Just to kind of grab some of these corners. And you notice it looks like it's selecting a face, but that's just because all the edges are selected for that area, right? It's not actually selecting a face, it's just letting you know about that. And then, of course, Bevel Tool, right, which we see is right here, but Control B is also the quick key for it, right? And then we could middle mouse drag just to kind of bevel it, right? And then we could go to the bevel option here, and we could turn up segments. Because remember, down here is the bevel. And see how we can give it some segments. In that case, I missed that edge. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to undo really quick. Just add that edge. And you notice how you don't even have to turn your bevel tool off. This is actually, when you start getting used to that in Blender, particularly some of you guys that are used to Maya, that's actually really awesome that you can undo your bevel tool still on, and then you could add that edge and then just not even turn the bevel tool back on. So remember, though, down here at the bottom, you'll always have your options for it. So you can click on that to open it. Turn up segments, and you can try different mitters. That's kind of usually how it handles the corners, right? So if you want to kind of try patch, see how patch handles that corner a little bit differently, right? So sharp kind of handles these corners like this. You can switch to patch or arc, and you see how arc handles that differently, right? So you can actually see that Blender's Bevel Tool is actually pretty great. Right? It's actually a pretty awesome bevel tool. So remember, even down here, I kind of alluded to that last time on our last video for the chair, but you can actually kind of play with your emitter, inner outer, and that's kind of how it handles kind of some of these corners, right? And you can switch this one to arc as well, which in this case I'm really not liking arc for that one. I think sharp was actually fine for those. So yeah, so that'll give us a pretty good result. That one's a little bit weird, but that's, you could always maybe do some minor adjustments to that later on. Or just add that edge into it, right? So sometimes it might even just be undo, add that extra edge, then middle mouse drag, right? And then like I said, you know, segments. But remember, it's just this guy down here. Click on bevel. And like I said, you could change the emitter to arc, and it just gives you kind of a different result in those corners. So your emitter is really kind of how it handles some of these corners. And you'll notice even here that this handles these areas pretty well, right? So I can hit Q to kind of just turn that tool off. If I go back to object mode, you'll see kind of these corners are a little sharp. So remember, that's just, particularly in object mode 4, right click, shade smooth. You notice how it kind of handles these a little bit weird, right? Kind of these large n-gons. So remember, that's when you can go to the green triangle right here. And you can go to normals. So you can turn auto smooth on. And I'd say like maybe set that to like 85 degrees so it does a better job. And you see how it can handle those a little bit better. So you can kind of get some of that in there. It kind of sometimes handles the shading a little bit weird there too. Oh, come on, 85. There we go. So you can kind of play with some of that a little bit. Keep in mind that sometimes with giant n-gons, you will get some of these shading artifacts a little bit there. So something to kind of keep in mind as you play with this and these tools. Just trying to get you guys some options for how to do these things. If we want, you know, we could always come back and connect some stuff up, right? So I could go to like vertex mode. I could select that vertex there, that one there, and we just right click. I mean, that brings up the vertex context menus, and then you can go to connect vertex pairs, and that'll kind of put a little edge in there. You can put some edges through here. So if you want to kind of rebuild this a little bit to handle it better, you can do that. All right. So this is kind of a little bit of what I wanted to kind of show you guys with the manifold, the bevel tools, shader stuff. And we can always come back in here and do some fixing of these things as well. One of the things you might even try is going to face mode and selecting some of these faces, right click. And you'll notice when you right click face context menu, there is a shade flat there. So you can actually kind of come back in here for some of these areas that are shading a little bit weird, right? And you can always just right click shade flat, and you'll see that they'll handle those a bit better, right? So keep in mind that you have some great kind of shading options, and even your shade smooth and your shade flat work at the polygon level, right? Now, I'm going to briefly draw a curve in here, and we'll do some more with this in another video as well, but I want to get this at least started for you guys today and then show you some more stuff next week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 4 for object mode, right? And then go to add curve, right? And we've seen this before. We saw it with our kind of our screw modifier for our lamp, right? And so I'm going to go to add curve, Nurbs curve. Wait for it to catch up. Occasionally you're seeing that Blender might need a little catch up because, like I said, I'm running Blender, I'm video capturing what I'm doing, and also I'm screen sharing in Teams. And the computer seems to be handling it okay. Now, like I said, if I hit Alt-X, that shows X-ray, right? That's that button right there. It's kind of a neat little shortcut. You'll see that there's our curve right there, right? So you kind of notice we have our Nurbs curve. Now in this case, though, I like that origin to stay there. So I'm going to hit 1 for vertex mode, right, with this curve selected. Wait for it to catch up. Come on, you can do it. You can do it, Blender. I have faith. And of course, those are all selected for us, but then we can just hit W for move this up. And it keeps that origin, that little green dot, and the cursor on the 0 of the world. And that's important for things like your mirror tool later on. So I can start to move these down, right? And I could, of course, hit Control E for extrusion to add a little bit more. And this one, I don't really care so much if this one's flat, because it's meant to be a pipe and a hose. It's going to stick out a little bit, right? I'll hit Alt-X to get that back to shaded. Extrude to kind of bring this one in. Middle mouse button to extrude to kind of get it pulling into the top there. And of course, W for move. We could grab these guys. Now, one of the things I really wanted to start to show you guys with this today, I'll extrude one more time down here. And remember, just using the move tool to select these verts. I'm just in 1 for edit mode, right? Vertex. Now, I've got my curve selected right here, right? And you'll notice that I've got the green curve, right? Because down here, you've kind of got your full level kind of properties for that specific object. So remember, we have our modifier, but there's also this little green curve right down here, right? So if I click on that, right, instead of being on the blue wrench, I click on the green curve, you'll notice there's an area in here, because we saw kind of the resolution preview for our screw modifier, right? And that's how you can kind of turn down how many sides this curve's going to have. So I usually have that lower. But there's an area called geometry, right? We open up the geometry area. And in the geometry area, there's something called bevel. And you'll notice that the depth is 0, but the moment I start to drag this up, so right, just green curve, open up the geometry section of the Nurbs curve options, and there's an area called bevel in which you can actually create a tube. Isn't that cool? And of course, like I said, I can keep extruding to kind of add more of the curve. I can move these guys up. Your mirror modifier will work with this also. So if I hit 4 for object mode, I can go back to the blue wrench, add modifier, mirror. And you see how we're starting to get kind of pipes and hoses? I'm going to Control S to save this, and we're going to call this let's call this mainframe, I guess. That'll probably work. There we go. Save as a Blender file. All right. And that'll, I think, be a great place to stop for today. We're going to come back at the end, a little after 10 o'clock, just to kind of do some review stuff. So let me kind of stop recording.